And good evening from Link NKY World Headquarters in downtown Covington, Kentucky. I'm Michael Monks, and tonight we kick off our live candidate forums here in Northern Kentucky as primary election day approaches on May 17. Our first forum is that for the Republican nomination for Campbell County Judge Executive. And we will have more forums tomorrow and all next week as well. Hope you'll tune in for those. And be sure to check out our continuing election coverage of all of the primary races across the region at linknky.com. We'll have stories about all of the featured races, as well as op-eds penned by the candidates themselves, explaining in their own words why they are seeking the offices that they are running for. Our guest this evening is Campbell County Judge Executive Steve Pendry, a Republican seeking nomination again for this office, to which he was first elected in 1998. A note for our viewers, we did invite challenger Anna Zinken, the chairwoman of the Campbell County Republican Party, who is running against Steve Pendry in this primary, but she declined to appear in the forum, citing her busy schedule. So again, we did invite the challenger, but she declined the opportunity. Judge Pendry is with us. Judge Pendry, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here, Michael.
Well, we would start these forums with an opening statement from our candidates. You are by yourself this evening, but I still want to give you the opportunity just to talk to voters directly with your opening pitch. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I guess the way I see things is sort of a poisonous atmosphere politically, sort of a dicey situation where finance is concerned. And if I turn on the TV and I watch those matters discussed, I'm a little discouraged with the way things are handled because from my perspective, the national media is looking for ratings points and looking after their position in the market with a whole lot more aggressiveness than they are looking after the national interests or the public's best interests. And there are a lot of politicians that do the same thing. I like to tell people, because I believe it is true, that if you put down the remote, quit watching TV, get involved in our community, you're going to find that most people are good people. They're either already good people or they're trying to become one. And we don't do things in Northern Kentucky the way it plays out on the national political scene. We actually work together. And if we didn't, we wouldn't have succeeded the way we have in Northern Kentucky. The stats are really phenomenal. They've been good and then later great for more than a generation. Northern Kentucky is the most vibrant economic area in our state, and Northern Kentucky outperforms the rest of the state consistently in producing new jobs. There's a lot less political strife here and a whole lot more cooperation, not just at the political level locally, but also in terms of the interaction of leadership from other sectors of our community, the business leaders, the educational leaders, the people that run charities and local government. Everybody that has a serious interest in the best interest of the community has a place at the table and deserves one. And we all work together to ensure that Northern Kentucky's interests are advanced. And I'd tell you that's the way things are. I'll give you a quick, interesting stat. From 2015 through 2020, which includes one COVID year, the state of Kentucky lost 42,000 jobs. And in the meantime, Northern Kentucky gained 11,000 jobs. Now, you're not going to see a stark difference in every reporting period going back through time. But for the last generation, Northern Kentucky has led the way in job creation. And that's the foundation, I think, in quality of life. If you handle the revenue that's shed with jobs and industry working in sync and producing, you're going to have a high quality of life in your community. And I think that's what we found to be true in Northern Kentucky.
Judge Pendry, a couple of things stand out to me there in your opening statements. And first, let's address the region. I thought it was interesting that you spoke so much about Northern Kentucky rather than just Campbell County specifically. Can you talk a bit about how you see the role of the judge executive in Campbell County regionally and the types of relationships that need to be built and the type of collaborative work that has to be done?
Well, the first thing I'll tell you is we are one indivisible community, and there are more people in a couple of the counties working outside the county than, well, there are more people in a couple of the counties that work outside the counties than stay within. Boone County's population swells dramatically during the day by tens of thousands of people, and that's where many of our folks wind up. With the narrowness of each county geographically and lined up right next to each other the way they are, it's a 20-minute drive to get to Boone County. So when I look at the possibilities and the three judge executives do, we are really doing our best, not only to represent our constituents, but to look at the good of the community as a whole. Because an investment made in one area has a return for everybody as close together as we live. And not very many of our constituents are conscious at every moment about where the jurisdictional lines are. So you asked specifically about Campbell County. Campbell County has less economic development than Boone County does, and it's the same with Kenton County, but we participate in it because a job opening in Boone or Kenton or Campbell, any of the three, is open to anybody. There's not discrimination according to where somebody lives or what county they come from. Our people have the advantage of economic development across the region and prosper by it mightily. The two counties, Kenton and Campbell, have a very similar household income and individual income. Boone's a little bit ahead. And all I can tell you is that looking at the whole rather than trying to, grub for things for an individual county when those things don't make sense in the circumstances, it just works a lot better.
And you are watching our coverage of election 2022. Primary election day is May 17. I'm Michael Monks at Lincoln, KY in Covington. We're joined by Campbell County Judge Executive Steve Pendry, who is running for re-election this year, first seeking the Republican nomination. He faces Campbell County Republican Chairwoman Anna Zinkin, who declined an invitation to appear at this forum. A reminder, we will be doing more live forums starting again tomorrow and for next week as well. Stay tuned for those details and our full election coverage at lincolnky.com. Judge, another thing you mentioned at the beginning that I wanted to follow up on to get further perspective is the national narrative that is starting to play out in local communities like Campbell County. It does seem in a lot of ways that the national issue du jour, whether valid or drummed up by opinion hosts on cable news and talk radio and online, it's starting to impact the way governments respond to the public or the way the public responds to the government. Can you expand upon those thoughts, how you're seeing that play out specifically in Campbell County?
Well, I think you have your finger on something that is going on all across the United States. And I'm not going to speak for other areas, but I'm just suggesting that our lives here are not those described by national media and some of the politicians. If you're going to benefit by being divisive, we don't need that in Northern Kentucky, because again, it's by cooperating that we succeeded. So I like to make clear that that's my perspective on things, because I think that's the reality. And I don't think it does anybody any good, the division that people are trying to create for their personal gain nationally. We need to get over it. We need to learn better. If we had a national crisis of sufficient magnitude, I think we'd all put aside our petty differences and recognize that we've got a hell of a lot more in common than we have that divides us. Look at the Ukrainians. The Ukraine has done wonderful things. Their people have been a marvel. Their leadership has been great. And they weren't the most cohesive of democracies, before the crisis hit. They are learning. They are learning by going through a crucible and a disaster, a disastrous test. What it means to be a nation, and the fact that they have things in common. I just can't imagine that we wouldn't react the same way in this country, and things that we all thought were of, or some of us thought were of unbelievable importance, would shrink to much less significance.
How do you retain that optimism, that perspective, when we really just went through exactly that, the COVID pandemic? An unprecedented humanitarian crisis, certainly nothing we've seen in our lifetime, something the world hadn't seen in a century. And I know you saw up close and personal the way some of us behaved towards one another, the way we responded to mitigation efforts, and the way that maybe we acted selfishly at times. So how do you reconcile the experience we just had with what you just said?
Well, because I think that the press did not put down its cudgel, and neither did the politicians. They were doing exactly what I just described. Everybody scrambling for whatever advantage they could. You're in an uncertain situation where the truth literally changes from week to week as we learn more, and you always want to look back to a prior period and hang somebody up, for the failure to have anticipated how the science was going to unfold. You can't do that, and we should be learning from that. And I think we're eventually going to, but I don't think that it happened to the extent in this area that it did nationally. Now, maybe your perspective is different, but I don't remember. While the local press occasionally reports people who are acting up, they aren't actively promoting it like they do at the national level. So, and then the last thing I'll tell you is you got to start picking people that set good examples and have an optimistic attitude, and start seeing the reason in that and promoting it.
And that's Judge Steve Pendry, Campbell County Judge Executive. It is unusual for an incumbent member of a party to face a primary challenge from someone heavily involved in the county party organization. And you hold the highest elected position among county officials in Campbell County as a Republican. And it's the chairperson of the Campbell County Republican Party that's running against you. I know you've faced primaries before. I know you've faced Democrats in the general before. So a campaign is not unusual for you. But this is, and I'm wondering if you can tell me what this says about the state of the local Republican Party, of which you are naturally a leader by virtue of your position.
Well, I think it says a lot about the state of the local Republican Party, and less about me. I'm always going to have an opposition at some level, and most people do, and that's welcome. That's part of the process. This is a little bit different in that it's the party's charge to even-handedly foster Republican values and support Republican candidates. And if you want to explain to me how that's possible to do, when you have the chairman and the vice chairman of the party running against longstanding incumbents in the party they're supposed to support, question for you.
We will be voting on May 17, and in your case, Republicans will be casting ballots, and casting ballots has become one of those issues that first emerged as a controversy in the national election of 2020 and has now gained traction at the local level with a lot of questions about the integrity of elections. I see even on your campaign website that you have election security or election integrity as one of your top issues. And I don't know if that would have been the case years before. Is there something you want to say to voters about the security, not just of what you expect in the 2022 election, but what we saw in Campbell County in the 2020 election?
Well, some of it might require me to get into the weeds and do voter analysis and so forth, but the election was not stolen in Campbell County. There are people who are concerned about that and will look me in the eye and say so with an open mind and an honest heart. And I'm going to look right back at them and tell them that not only have we very carefully considered the possibility, and only having investigated thoroughly have we discounted that possibility, but we've also made provision for the future that election integrity is assured. We had 17-year-old voting machines that were designed and approved at one time for people with handicaps or challenges to use. And then another voting machine in each precinct that the vast majority of people wound up using that were also dated somewhat. And all of them have been replaced with the the latest security features, the best possible machines that have been vetted by the feds and the state as being safe and secure.
You're watching election coverage from Link NKY. I'm Michael Monks, joined now by Campbell County Judge Executive Steve Pendry, a Republican seeking renomination in the May 17 primary. He faces challenger Anna Zinkin, the chairwoman of the Campbell County Republican Party. She declined our invitation to participate in tonight's forum. Tomorrow, we'll be talking with the Republican candidates for House District 68, also in Campbell County. So be sure to tune in for that and find all of our election coverage at linknky.com. So Judge, we've covered some of those party issues, some of those national issues that have filtered into the local level. But as for local specific issues, you're running for election again 24 years after the first time you sought this position successfully. You've been elected every 4 years since, sometimes facing primary challenges as you do now, and sometimes facing general election. Why run again? I mean, by the end of this, if should you win another term, that'll be a total of about 28 years in office. Why run again?
Well, I'm not old enough to run for president, apparently. And yes, I've been around a while, but I think I've done a good job and I enjoy it. In the meantime, we went through the COVID years. We've had some incredible strains financially. There's federal money falling out of the air, and partly as a consequence, there's also an inflation rate. If you look back 12 months, you're looking at 8.5%. Prior to the COVID issue and the federal bailouts, if you want to call it that, we were looking at an era of austerity coming up because so much of the money in the state of Kentucky, if you look at the money that the state and the local governments spend, it is lopsidedly the state in the state of Kentucky that spends the most money. The average state is a 50-50 split roughly. In Kentucky, it's more like 75-25. And the state has its financial issues. Now, that's all been papered over because of the stimulus money, but they have enormous pension fund deficits they're going to have to work their way through that threaten to crowd out a lot of other spending. So when I talked to you 4 years ago, I was probably telling you, looking forward to the day when all that comes to pass, we're going to need people that know what they're doing, that can add and subtract, that have been through shocks to the system like this. So there's one set of issues that I think makes it a little more difficult for a new person to cope. And then the political atmosphere, as we've described it, the same way. It's not as easy as some might think to find people who are very well qualified to run and who are willing to do so in the current atmosphere. And I'm used to it.
Is there anything that you can think of back when Steve Pendry was 24 years younger and running for judge executive in 1998? And this is something that I want to accomplish as judge executive that even now still manages to evade you?
Well, we had pension solutions on the docket even then. And yes, we have saved money, not quite enough probably to cover our entire pension obligation if it were called on one day. But every year I've been in office, we've produced at least some surplus money, and we've saved our money because government accounting is not full balance sheet accounting. Yes, you have an income and expense statement, but you don't have assets and liabilities off here offsetting all that. So there's nothing out here that tells you, hey, Steve, you owe 30 to 45 million dollars in unfunded pension liability, but it's there. And actually, this is one of the problems with government at all levels. It's the same system of accounts, and you have the same thing with unfunded Social Security obligations at the federal level, the state pensions the same way. And there are contortions that you need to go through to figure out what your actual financial circumstance is. And ours is sound. And it's that way because we have acted on our own to put the money aside that's going to be necessary to meet the obligations to our employees that we have. It's there. All right. So could I get the state to fix the problem? No. Did we act on our own to mitigate it as completely as possible? Yes.
Campbell County Judge Executive Steve Pendry, who's joining us here live on Link NKY, the beginning of our live forums for the May 17 primary. I'm Michael Monks at Link NKY headquarters in downtown Covington. Find all of our election coverage at linknky.com. Judge, as we start to wrap things up, I know we didn't want to go the full 45 minutes that we'd originally scheduled, should your opponent have shown up as well, Anna Zinkon, who declined our invitation to participate. I'll give you the opportunity to wrap up in your own words here with this prompt. We spoke a bit about the region and the three counties and how they do line up. They're relatively small. You can drive from one to the other rather quickly, but they're strangely diverse for how small they are geographically, topographically. They go from urban to suburban to very rural very, very quickly. And perhaps in the theme of bringing people together, as you talked about earlier, what is a unifying message for the residents of Newport, with the residents of Cold Spring, with the residents of Camp Springs? You know, how do you talk to all of them about seeing the same or at least similar goal?
Well, in the first place, there may be differences in topography and geography, but as far as the people are concerned, there's a circulation pattern that would astonish people if they considered it. I go out and knock on doors once every 4 years, and I knock on most of the doors in Campbell County when I do that. And what you find is the kids that I grew up with in Fort Thomas are living out in the county now. And people out in the county, when they get to be a certain age, move in to be closer to the hospital. Those are just, that's just one pattern to talk about. But they're not only circulation patterns within the county itself, but also across northern Kentucky. And what it means is we all have something in common. We have a common future. We have a common economy. We need to work together, make investments where we're going to get the highest rate of return, and it floats all boats. When I first got into office, we were trailing Kenton County in household income by a pretty considerable margin. And we're roughly equivalent to where they are now. Again, it has worked for everybody. So, I only have a couple of minutes to sum up, but what works should not be casually tossed aside, and that includes me.
And that is Campbell County Judge Executive Steve Pendry, who is seeking the Republican nomination again on May 17. He faces Campbell County Republican Party Chairwoman Anna Zinkon on May 17. Judge Pendry, we do appreciate the time that you gave us, and I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
And you've been watching live coverage of election 2022 from NKY Election Central at Link NKY. Michael Monks. Go to linknky.com for more election coverage, including articles about more races across the region and op-eds from candidates in their own words explaining why they're seeking office. I'm Michael Monks reporting from Covington. We'll talk again soon.